to Playbook for Performance, the official podcast of Shauna Corden, the Joan of Arc for corporate healing and performance. Join the quest to make work fun again by preparing leadership for engaging workplaces. And now, your host.
Hello and welcome, friends. I'm Shauna Corden, and I'm glad to have you here on the Playbook for Performance podcast. Our mission is to make work fun again by building better leaders. This month's theme is all about a new dialogue. And if you have a specific question on a new dialogue, email us and we can add it to our social media. Just drop a note to podcast@shaunacorden.com. Now, last week we talked about the must mindsets for resolving conflict. And today we're talking about putting play into conflict. The fallout of conflict is real. There are a lot of damages that come with conflict. Part of it's a loss of control. There's digging in, making sure that we're right. The escalation that happens when our other party doesn't capitulate. We tell ourselves stories about the other side, what they might be thinking, what they do, why they're wrong. We have separation from them. Now, if you think about the word hell is a word that means separation from God. And we are putting ourselves in a bit of a hell. Our colleagues, our friends, our family, they are also connected to something greater than ourselves. Whether it's God, the universe, whatever you want to refer to it in your own vocabulary, there is a bit of hell when we separate in conflict like that. There's also this idea that we must invest to change others' minds, to enlighten them. But last I checked, no one ever converted based on an argument. So we saw a long history over the last few years. Probably I noticed it starting with the election in 2016. People were awfully surprised. Now, I am proud to say that I predicted it. I saw the trends that were happening in Europe, and I thought, well, maybe people are ready to swing back. I always think of it as a big pendulum that corrects itself. It goes too far one way, comes back the other way. And there's always a sense of overcorrection in the beginning to make sure we've gone far enough. And it escalated. It went with Me Too. And certainly there have been a lot of benefits that came along with Me Too. I know that I have been subject to a lot of discriminatory practices over the years, and some of them were with very good intentions and some were not. We had our BLM movement. We had the fight against our cops and crime prevention and all of the thought processes that went around that. And probably most obviously and most telling and touching were around politics, whether you were red, whether you were blue. And all of these things incited conversations. And I think gently they begin with this idea of, I'm trying to feel you out. I want to know where you stand. I'm uncomfortable with the vagueness or not being able to put a label on you. I want to be more comfortable with this. And after learning someone's side, then the further dialogue went in. It became more of an interrogation. Might have been a polite interrogation, but still an interrogation, demanding to know where people stood on certain issues and how they were able to qualify that or resolve it in their own mind. How could they possibly say this? It really changed people's minds about the person that they were interacting with. And in some cases, they severed relationships with them. In my own family, years ago, I had an uncle and his daughter-in-law disagree on politics, and it became escalated. It was a shouting match. By the end of the evening, they decided they weren't going to see each other again, and they didn't for years. It was tragic, and I think about how much the grandchildren missed out on that relationship. But both of them had really dug in, and they got to the point where they said things that couldn't be taken back. And I'm sure all of you have had experiences like this, if not yourself, you've observed it in others, where people have severed relationships in order to protect the way that they think. But what happened to agreeing to disagree? What happened to this idea that I respect you? I know that we don't agree on everything. We love diversity. That's what makes life exciting. We like certainty, of course, but we also like surprise. We like variety. We have a need for it. And so how can we incorporate all of that and still be resolved to remain friends with someone who believes differently than we do? Well, I have a suggestion. And this is where today's topic really comes into play. It's the idea of putting play into conflict. Have fun, be playful. In the book Super Better, Jane McGonigal talks about this story where she is relating someone who has written back to her saying, I've gamified this situation. I want to tell you about it. And essentially, this individual is interviewing for a postdoc position, and on the hiring committee is an individual who is notorious for really cutting people down, insulting their research, actually reading their dissertations and poking holes into some of their assumptions and conclusions, et cetera. So not a fun way to spend an afternoon interviewing with an individual like this. However, after reading Super Better and seeing Jane's work, he decided to make a game of it. And he created his own little mental bingo card where he basically, through anecdotal information and other colleagues who had interviewed with this person, basically created a list of the things that this person would do to either insult him, his work, or otherwise, and created a little bingo card of it. And so each time that this interviewer did something that was anticipated, he was able to check the box, and somehow I think he eventually did get bingo. But this can be a fun way to remain a little bit separated so that we don't get triggered, so we don't engage so much, but we actually can have fun with it and keep it light, keep it playful, and even invite our colleague to do the same. So the scenario might look something like this. Let's say I'm blue, you're red. Here's all the assets of the blue side. Here's all the assets of the red side. Here's all of the liabilities of the blue side. Here's all the liabilities of the red side. And each of us decides to create our own little bingo card about the arguments that may be made about a political party, an individual, etc. And we've each agreed ahead of time that we are going to create this little bingo card. Now, make sure that the argument or the discussion, the new dialogue, stays in the productive manner, and that you're not just architecting everything to win your bingo game. But as things happen, as comments are made, perhaps they're talking points of the opposite party or blind spots, whatever it is, you can mentally check that box. Or even if you're being really open about it and upfront with your colleague, you can also identify these things ahead of time. And as they come up, you can even physically check them off in front of them. This distracts us from escalating by anticipating these gold stars, points, bingo spaces for the dialogue partner, hitting their anchored mindsets. Remember that these beliefs that they have are as near and dear to them as your values are to you. And we really want to invite them to play. Again, curiosity is the opposite of judgment. The more that we can be playful, be curious, have fun with things, the less likely it is that we will get into this fallout of conflict, these damages that I mentioned before, or telling ourselves stories about these people, and inevitably that separation, that hell that comes from being separated from a part of our source. So I invite you to really take a look at this. If you need a coach to help you and your partner, your colleague, resolve conflict, set up your bingo boards, how you want to construct this ideal dialogue, there are assessments that help with this, and I can help you become aware of those personal preferences and tendencies when it comes to conflict. And I offer workshops about this and conflict resolution coaching. So you can always contact me at shauna@shaunacorden.com. So our tool of the week is autonomy, and it's really choosing your mindset, going into a conversation and deciding what your state will be. Are you going to be light and playful, or are you going to be right? This is such an important thing. It's actually part of my husband and I's vows, is to be kind instead of right. So here's your field work, because coaching without action isn't coaching. It's just entertainment. Play the game of your choice, whether it's a checklist, a bingo game, whether it's opaque or whether it's transparent. But really being in that playful mindset, to have fun in an area of anticipated conflict. If you're working with someone who just doesn't see things the way you do, make a list of all the things that they're going to say, that they're going to do, and check those boxes as they come up. Invite them to do the same for you. And I suspect when you exchange lists that you'll find that you're far more alike than you really thought. If anything, you're good at winning games. Each week in the podcast, I like to highlight a leader doing it well in the news or from a listener and one that had a wobble. And if you'd like to nominate your organization, please email me at podcast@shaunacorden.com. This week, I want to share that the Wall Street Journal today published an article talking about a survey where 71% of the employers in the Bay Area want their employees back in the office. Now, we all know that people don't necessarily want to do that. Probably the biggest benefit that people have named from the shutdown is the lack of commute. They have really enjoyed having that extra time in each day. And especially in a crowded place like the Bay Area, that's significant. The same firm that conducted this survey also surveyed 1,000 employees in the same area who said that they would quit under such a demand. And so it really is quite interesting to see how people respond to this. And my colleague Barbara Troutline and I are going to be doing a talk that talks about the half of these employees that said that they would quit under such a demand. Our talk is going to be at the ACMP Global Change Conference, and the title of our talk is Coaching Change in the New Autonomous Work Culture. We are leveraging all the ideas that made the smartphone so awesome in terms of personalizing it, making it portable, and our argument is that the same thing is now with our work culture. People want to personalize their schedule. They want it to be portable. They find that the balance for their families, for their mental health, etc., is much, much better, especially those who have teenagers who are struggling with mental illness. So there was another article the day before in the Wall Street Journal talking about the number of female teenagers checking into hospitals based on having tics that they did not have before the pandemic, and attributing it to watching TikTok videos. No pun intended there. But serious challenges are coming from social media and teenagers' mental health, and having a parent available to help with that is all that more important. So I'm really curious to see how people respond when these employers demand employees back in the office, and whether they really will quit, and what it'll do to our work culture even more then. That's all for this week. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, give us a rating, tell your friends. And if you'd like to hear more about a topic that would make your work fun by improving the leaders in your organization, please drop us a line at podcast@shaunacorden.com. Until next week, take very good care.
Thank you for listening to Playbook for Performance. To learn more about Shauna Corden, her consulting programs and tools, please visit her website at shaunacorden.com and follow us on social media at Shauna Corden.